Don't let YouTube decide what information you get. That's your choice. YouTube is deleting our videos and cuts you off from a source of honest reporting. Make sure you don't lose access to NTD's news content, and take a quick moment to subscribe to our newsletter so no matter what happens here, you'll keep your access to a trustworthy news source.
A county sheriff in Southern California says he will not force his employees to receive a vaccine if they choose not to. He believes vaccine mandates have become too politicized. NTD's Cynthia Kai has more.
Speaking during a weekly live Facebook Q&A on October 7th, Los Angeles County Sheriff Alex Villanueva said he encourages but will not force his employees to get vaccinated after the city approved one of the strictest COVID-19 vaccine mandates in the country.
As I said, no, I'm not forcing anyone. The issue has become so politicized, there are entire groups of employees that are willing to be fired and laid off rather than get vaccinated. So I don't want to be in a position to lose 5–10% of my workforce overnight on a vaccine mandate.
Villanueva said the new mandate puts him in a difficult position where he faces losing more employees. He said the police force already struggles with bare-bones staffing issues due to decreased funding.
I have deputies, I have sergeants work in multiple shifts week after week, month after month. I have sergeants working nine shifts on top of their normal shifts a month.
During the Facebook live stream, he asked city officials to stop politicizing public safety. The City of Los Angeles City Council voted to approve the new vaccine mandate on October 6th. The new mandate will require anyone aged 12 and older to provide proof of vaccination to enter indoor venues, such as restaurants, gyms, theaters, salons, indoor government facilities, shopping centers, and more. Exceptions will be available for individuals with valid medical exemptions and for those with sincerely held religious belief. Individual businesses and locations will review exception requests. People with approved exemptions will need to show a negative COVID-19 test within 72 hours. The mandate will become effective as of November 4th, but does not apply to pharmacies and grocery stores. Cynthia Kai, NTD News, California.
The continued downpour in China's Shangxi province is forcing authorities to release water from reservoirs. But they're doing it without sufficient warning. And as a result, tragically, in one village, an elderly man was swept away. We spoke with his son to understand what happened. NTD's Don Ma has more.
Heavy rain in northern China's Shanxi province is causing reservoirs to overflow. And in one village, local authorities discharged reservoir water, which swept away an elderly man. He was yet to be found as of Thursday. We interviewed the man's son to find out what happened. We used a voice actor and gave him a pseudonym to protect his identity.
The reservoir from upstream released water, but before they started releasing it, we didn't get any notification. They said they sent a text message to a group chat, but the elderly people in the village don't even use smartphones, so they didn't know about the water release at all.
He says that the village authorities did announce by loudspeaker that they would discharge water from a reservoir October 1st to the 4th. But on the 5th, authorities were still releasing water. And without further warning, they suddenly increased the volume of water released. That was the day Mr. Lee's father was washed away. He was 66 years old.
I don't know what time it was in the afternoon. The upstream reservoir suddenly raised all its floodgates and released water. But my father didn't know anything about it. In the afternoon, he rode his electric bicycle home as usual. As he was crossing a bridge, the water swept him away. The bridge even collapsed from the force of the water. At about 7:30 that night, we heard that my father had been in an accident.
After hearing the news, he rushed to the scene.
We rushed over and found him standing on his electric bicycle holding onto a tree. Rescuers also arrived. They got about 4 or 5 meters from my father. They tried rescuing him twice and couldn't do it. When they tried getting close to him to save him the third time, they found that he was no longer there. He was gone.
Mr. Lee says that they were searching for him on Thursday. They found his bicycle but didn't find his father. He says flood water was released again suddenly and they were forced to stop searching. Lee says local authorities have not done enough to deal with the floods. He says they failed to ensure that everyone knew about the discharge and suggests that they could have arranged personnel to be on duty in the village. Don Ma, NTD News.
And also in China, thousands gathered in protest over the unexpected death of a worker. The man reportedly went to collect his wages, but returned severely burned. Local authorities dispatched their police force to suppress the uprising. Here are the details.
Thousands of Chinese migrant workers are protesting for a fellow worker who died. Wang Qi lost his life trying to recover wages he was owed. The tragedy began last Sunday in a city in the southeast province of Zhejiang where he worked. Online Chinese media says Wang's boss had delayed his wage of $2,800. But when he tried to ask for it, he was severely burned all over. That's according to a tweet of someone who says he's Wang's brother. He says Wang couldn't afford medical treatment and died 2 days later. Online Chinese media say local authorities released no details of the death. Now, thousands of migrant workers from Wang's hometown are protesting in front of the local town hall. Numerous specialized police officers appeared on the scene. They stand together to separate the protesters. This issue triggered heated discussion online. A comment says, "Do you know what's the most powerful thing about the Chinese Communist Party? It's the best in the world at controlling people." Another says the delayed wages aren't worth much. They would rather spend 100 times, 1,000 times more in controlling people than compromise. Most migrant workers in China live a miserable life due to discrimination from communist regime policies. Most of them have a hukou in villages and go to the cities for work. Hukou is like a passport inside China. People are registered with a hukou at birth, which basically says you're from that area. If you move to another place later, you won't have access to the social benefits there. This is especially relevant for these migrant workers. Since most of them got their hukou from the villages, they have very limited access to city residents' benefits, such as education and healthcare. As a result, many of their children have to stay behind in the villages, and they suffer long periods of separation from their parents. According to statistics from China's Labor Bulletin, 1/3 of total Chinese laborers are migrant workers. For the past 3 decades, migrant workers have been recognized as the engine of China's rapid economic growth. But due to Beijing's policies, they are also marginalized. And stories like Wang Qi's are not a one-off in China.
And a baby in New York City was about to die before police officers saved its life. The NYPD published footage of the incident. The lady handed the baby to an officer who carried it into a police car. From there, the officers rushed to the hospital while one of them performed CPR. Once they arrived, the officer didn't lose a second and ran into the building with the baby in his arms. He laid it onto a hospital bed, and from there, doctors took over and managed to save the baby's life. The September jobs report is out. On the surface, it shows a lukewarm recovery. The private sector managed to hire a decent number of workers, but 100,000 government jobs were lost, and that brought the total down. NTD's Kevin Hogan has the update.
U.S. employers added just under 200,000 jobs in September. The private sector added 317,000 jobs, while the number of government jobs dropped by 123,000. Though the economy is growing, it's doing so at the slowest pace this year. Industries from leisure to retail and manufacturing are all adding jobs, with wages rising too. But the mediocre jobs report suggests the Delta variant and a shortage of workers are still presenting a challenge. The unemployment rate fell about 0.5 point from the previous month, and that's what President Biden chose to highlight in this lower-than-expected jobs report.
Today's report has the unemployment rate down to 4.8%. A significant improvement from when I took office and a sign that our recovery is moving forward, even in the face of a COVID pandemic.
A phenomenon has emerged throughout the pandemic. Workers have taken a closer look at their career path and started looking at opportunities to work remotely and finding more about employee benefits and their long-term future. It's known as the Great Reevaluation.
The Great Reevaluation, as we put it, is certainly underway with candidates just looking at different opportunities. They're becoming a little bit more picky about what they apply for. They're becoming a bit more selective about the companies that they apply to, and they're being more objective about the things that are important to them on a skill level, not just a job level.
But supply chain bottlenecks have only become worse. This has caused factory production to slow and left store shelves empty. not to mention bringing inflation to its highest point in 30 years.
And that hurts consumers and ultimately is a challenge for business. And so when we see inflation-adjusted wages or wages adjusted for inflation on the decline in recent months, that means that consumers have less buying power, and that weighs on the recovery.
Yet a lot of experts are predicting good things as the virus wanes and more people start traveling and eating out. They say at that point there will be more people looking for jobs and hiring will pick up. Kevin Hogan, NTD News.
Parents rallied outside their local school board meeting in Fairfax County, Virginia last night. They were sending a message that they won't be intimidated by the Justice Department or FBI following the DOJ's recent directive. We hear more on this issue from the Vice President of Parents Defending Education. NTD's Grace Coulter has the details.
We the parents! We the parents! We the parents!
Parents here in Fairfax County, Virginia, have a message for the DOJ and their local school board.
Are you guys afraid of standing up for your kids?
Never.
They rallied Thursday night outside their county's school board meeting. The rally's in response to Attorney General Merrick Garland's directive to the FBI and other law enforcement to investigate an alleged spike in threats of violence towards school board members. Garland's directive came after the National School Boards Association asked the Biden administration for help against threats. But numerous parents view the move by the association and the DOJ as a scare tactic to stop parents from pushing back against certain policies and curricula.
Nationwide, parents are paying attention. They're asking the school board serious questions about how money is spent, the ideology that's being promoted in the classroom, and these school board members don't like getting these hard questions.
Asra Nomani, the Vice President for Strategy and Investigations at Parents Defending Education, was at the rally and behind the camera. Speaking with NTD's The Nation Speaks, Nomani accused the National School Boards Association of launching a character assassination on parents. The association said in its letter to the president that the acts of malice, violence, and threats against public school officials could be classed as the equivalent to a form of domestic terrorism and hate crimes. But Nomani said she looked carefully through the footnotes and said none of the referenced incidents were acts of violence. She says that although parents won't back down, they're concerned about what could be labeled as a threat or harassment.
So they are asking us really important questions like, what does it mean to be, quote, threatening, as is now been criminalized, in the language of the School Board Association? Is it just speaking loudly? Is it calling them out? And we're giving the advice that, all good debaters have, which is debate the ideas that exist, that are bad ideas, that you're challenging. Don't make it personal.
She said Parents Defending Education also recommends parents videotape all proceedings at school board meetings and reminds parents that they too are being videotaped.
And they're waiting to catch you in a, quote, angry parent moment. And so model, the kind of engagement that you want everybody to see.
She has another piece of advice for parents.
Be unapologetic, in your defense of children, because we are their strongest advocates. These poor kids are minors in society and don't have the kind of voice that we have, and they should not be held hostage by activists who are trying to intimidate their biggest defenders, the parents.
The DOJ is expected to launch further efforts to address the alleged rise in criminal conduct directed towards school personnel in the coming weeks, including the creation of a task force. Grace Coulter, NTD News.
Tesla is moving its headquarters out of California to Austin, Texas. Elon Musk says it'll be easier to scale its operations from there. NTD's Faye Quarter has the details.
And then I'm excited to announce that we're moving our headquarters to Austin, Texas.
It's official. Elon Musk announced Thursday that Tesla is moving its headquarters from Palo Alto, California to Austin, Texas.
It's tough for people to afford houses, and a lot of people have to come in from far away, and so it's we're taking it as far as possible, but it's there's a limit to how big you can scale in the Bay Area. So
Realtor.com says the median home price in Palo Alto is $3.3 million, while the median home price in Austin is $588,000.
This could also be a potentially personal issue for Elon Musk. He stands to save approximately $2.5 billion by moving from California to Texas.
Nicholas Creel is an assistant professor of business law at Georgia College. He says California has a capital gains tax that treats income from stock options as any other income. Creel says another consideration is SpaceX.
SpaceX. He is already located in Boca Chica, Texas, trying to get that off the ground, literally and figuratively. And so being a little bit closer and more accessible to that new company is definitely something that's going to drive this.
Meanwhile, California's income tax rate can be as high as 12.3% for those in the top bracket, and the corporate income tax rate is a flat 8.84%. Meanwhile, Texas has no income taxes. In CNBC's list of America's top states for business 2021, Texas is ranked as the 4th best state, while California is ranked 33rd.
Just to be clear, though, we will be continuing to expand our activities in California. So this is not a matter of sort of Tesla leaving California. As I said, our intention is to actually increase output from Fremont and from Giga Nevada by 50%.
Musk says their Texas factory is 5 minutes from the airport and 15 minutes from downtown. He also cited commute times as a reason for the shift. Bay Quarter, NTD News.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for watching us on YouTube. Don't forget to catch all of our programs on TV. NTD Evening News is on every weekday at 6:30 p.m. Find your local NTD channel at ntd.com/TV.